Welcome to the Stories Are Soul Food podcast, presented by Cannonball Books, the kids' fiction imprint of Cannon Press.
Met a ghost of a king on the road when I first fell. Fire burning to my knees I fell. Met a ghost of a king on the road.
Welcome to episode 117.
And yeah, you get two
SASF.
back-to-back lamps.
Back-to-back lamps, courtesy of John Irwin. This back-to-back schedule has been presented by you, John. Jonathan.
Another shout out to our guy.
Yeah, okay. But don't worry, I'm not bitter. I just picked scabs for years.
But it's on the surface. It's not inside.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, here we are.
So we're talking about
Jojo Rabbit.
Jojo Rabbit.
Taika Waititi's first Oscar movie. An Academy Award winner. We don't care about Academy Awards, though.
Did it win? What did it win?
Or is it a nomination? I should have looked this up.
I think it was nominated. I don't know what it may have won something like best paper costumes, but I don't know.
Yeah. It did have that. It's
Best fat German child goes to Jojo Rabbit. So Brian's looking this up. He wants to know what it went.
Academy Award for Best Writing Adapted Screenplay.
Oh, yeah.
No, it won Best Picture.
Did it really?
Yeah.
I apologize.
Best Actress in a Supporting Role. Those are three.
Who knew?
It got Trace.
This tells you how little I pay attention.
I know. It doesn't matter, does it?
It won Best Picture? Are you sure?
Yeah, right there. Academy Award for Best Picture.
That's nuts. I normally would expect to know that. So I apologize to all our devoted lamp followers for not knowing what the Oscars did or did not do.
I think that I tried to find a National Book Award winner that I recognized. I had to go back to the 70s, and I read books. So I think
okay, so that we'll just say that's similar to
similar to the situation.
Okay.
Yeah, so today you'll find out, we'll talk about caricature. You'll also find out why Hitler's not the only made-up character in this movie. Other such fun things. I feel like I unraveled a couple questions watching this.
Did we get sent questions by this one?
We got 3.
Okay, good. Let's start with those.
Okay, so we're actually going to have... Molly says she really appreciated it. Her only question has to do with the Yorkie character who can never see past the lies. And that one I feel is like I feel like I figured out Yorkie this time for the first time.
Yeah?
Yeah. He's fake.
Right.
Yeah. So he's not real. He's the optimistic version of, or I guess what Jojo wishes he could be if he were a child in the army. Is that the right way of putting it? Yorkie tells us all the way through the movie what exactly he is, because even in the first scene when they're in that tent together, Yorkie says, he says, "I guess I'm just a boy inside a fat kid's body."
Yeah. Which
is funny, but it literally is Jojo inside a fat kid's body. And then later on through the movie, Yorkie, in the middle of the scene when there's death and destruction everywhere, he meets Yorkie, and Yorkie says, "It's almost like I can't die."
Yeah.
And he also, I think, has bullet holes in the back of his... It's hard to tell. Yeah. It looks like he's been shot in the back.
But he's still in his little costume and is still optimistic. And,
yep.
Yeah.
And then at the very last scene, I think the real tell too is that Yorkie knows things that only Jojo knows. Right. So he knows about his mom being hung. And I think that's the final tell. But I did not pick up on that the first time watching.
I didn't either. I watched it a couple times. I'd say probably time 2 I had him pegged as not as fictitious, not as a projection, but as a projection for the creator, as a projection for the director, for Taika.
Yeah.
So so he's playing this role for Jojo that you just described, as opposed to Jojo's creation.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting, because it's not something I had at all.
Yeah.
So that's fun. That gives me another reason to watch it again. It makes perfect sense. It actually clicks really well.
It does.
So that was the spot I had him in, but I had it there for Taika's benefit as opposed to Jojo's creation. It makes complete sense.
He also doesn't get, Yorkie's the one who goes and finds him in the woods to tell him things are okay. None of the other boys do. And the reason, of course, is because Molly asked that question, how come Yorkie doesn't ever stop buying into lies? And so those are two interpretations. One, Taika's.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. It makes sense that he would, you miss it because that Jojo's talking about Hitler's his best friend, is like his best friend.
Right.
And so you kind of miss that because here's his actual best friend. You're seeing, fake best friend, actual best friend, and then realizing, I think you're right. I think that it is a stack of schizophrenia, basically.
Right. This kid is so lonely.
Yeah.
That he needs to make up not only Hitler as a best friend, but a real kid as his best friend.
Yeah, I'm going to need to watch it again because I'm really curious what would push the other direction. I'm sure there are things that could in there that would kind of make the contra case.
Right.
And it's the way these things work is, this is not to say this is the case here, but there's also iterations of scripts and drafts and
oh yeah.
So it's like, what is the movie now? But are you picking up on the ghosts of what it was in a previous draft?
Interesting.
And they decided like, no, that's too much. He's real, but then there's still
yeah
residue. I don't know yet. I'll have to go watch it, but I do. What you're saying makes complete sense to me. I'm going to had him as a fiction, but he is this fictional. He's like this hilarious, pure version of JoJo.
Yeah.
Minus the fitness, obviously.
Right. He's always optimistic.
Just a sweetheart.
Yep.
Just a little sweetheart.
Yep.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. And I really do like this film. Did we get any objections to it? So that was a question about Yorkie's character.
Yes, we did. So Maris wrote me saying, I'm the person who started watching it and quit because it felt so irreverent.
Right.
To be handling this topic. She said after her kid said, no, this movie's great, and we picked it as a lamp club, she went back and really liked it, but does feel like it's on that knife edge.
Feels guilty.
Yeah, it's on the knife edge of a knife edge of falling into. Well, she wanted to ask, what are the pitfalls associated with using a caricature like that for Hitler? But I think that kind of gets to the movie as a whole. And her suggestion was, do you think it's because Elsa, Rosie, and Jojo are so well acted and so complete, full characters that it allows Klinzendorf and, Hitler, obviously, to kind of rotate around the real human core?
Okay, so real quick, not the real Hitler.
Sorry. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the first big thing is this is a
important to
deluded, brainwashed little German boy's dream of Hitler.
Yeah.
Which is very
functionally his dad's stand-in too.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. It's a very different thing. So the question is, in narrative, why can you be this satirical? Why can you be this, this much of a parody?
Right.
Because we see that with Rockwell's character too. It's like we're leaning really hard in there.
Klinzendorf.
But we go kind of in a weird Life is Beautiful slapstick direction when there's like German shepherds. It's like we've got these really super basic who's on first level humor where I just misunderstood you.
Right. And the Hiles, where they're all hiling each other in a circle round and round.
So funny, which is all very Monty Python, very slapsticky.
Yeah.
So the thing I love about this movie is its combination of flavors that would not normally show up in a film. And this is one of those things I think storytellers need to learn is when they're trying to write realism and they write something that's humorless, they're not writing realism. When they're trying to write comedy and there's no real stakes, they're not writing something truly comedic. And so we have a history of like, hey, this is where we put all the funny things. And so, you get a comedy, watching a comedy is like having somebody hand you a little bottle of donut sprinkles. And you're not getting the donut, you're not getting anything. It's just, here's a bottle of donut sprinkles. We're going to be hilarious.
Yeah.
It's never quite as funny. Because contrast and surprise and inappropriateness or apparent inappropriateness, the unexpected is a huge driver of humor. And so once you're just sitting there expecting, we're just here for the donut sprinkles, you end up with comedians getting more and more foul because they're trying to shock you or give you the unexpected. And this is different. We're all sitting here watching a World War II Holocaust movie. And the stakes are very real. This has only ever been handled with Schindler's List level of solemnity. You know, it's like a lot of gravity, understandably. And it takes somebody like Taika Waititi to show you a picture that is in part, at least, more accurate, like more honest. Germans were people. They were brainwashed, petty, idiotic. They were human beings who were duped and then bought in. Tons of them, super evil. But it wasn't all mustache twirly. It wasn't all cape and beret and melodrama. They would be joking and they would be laughing and they would be clumsy and they would be stupid and little boys would be morons and they're just idiots. And the thing that's funny is this kind of patronizing condescension of a caricature is a more vicious criticism of the Reich than, Man in the High Castle. It's like where it's just so serious and so heavy. It was serious and heavy. We all know that the consequences were serious and heavy. But how do you get there? This absolute pettiness. So, which is more honest about the clown that Hitler was?
Right.
Something that's, Valkyrie or something that's Jojo Rabbit.
Right.
And it's a balance. It's a combination. So I've told people for years, I've told NSA students, like, I've always heard people talk about what a great rhetorician Hitler was or very effective or whatever. It's like, but really, was he? It's like he was a match in a moment. And he obviously like created this cultish nightmare. But he didn't create all the ingredients and he didn't create the chemistry of that volcano, that was all building up post World War I. And he showed up. And how does God tell stories? And this is ultimately what this podcast always comes back to, is in the most serious cataclysm and conflict and tragedy of the previous century, right in the middle of that century, we have the world in the balance, genocide, horror upon horror. It's just awful. It's as bad as it gets. And here's this character with that haircut and that demeanor. And God gives him that mustache. Like he draws on that mustache on the statue. It's like there's just this flippant disrespect of Hitler already. He's begging for Taika Waititi's
what's funny is
representation.
Hitler cut that mustache off because it wouldn't fit in his gas mask and then kept the little one. He did it to himself because he had to and then thought, oh, this looks pretty good.
It's kind of my thing.
In real life.
This is kind of my signature. And he's not wrong. It became his signature. No one ever will get to
Charlie Chaplin, we're sorry, you're not coming around again.
And it's funny because I've heard Nate Bargatze talks about this, a comedian, where he talks about Halloween and like, oh, kids love pirates and they love dressing up like pirates. They love. I think it's Nate Bargatze does this bit. It's like, we're like, oh, you're so adorable, you little murdering rapist. It's like these horrible people, these monsters and killers, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna dress right up as that. And he's like, and he goes on, and he's like, there's they want to change, they want to dress as fill in the blank, the devil, and we're like, oh, you're so cute. You're dressed as Lucifer. You're dressed as a murdering rapist. And then some kid's like, I want to be Hitler. And you're like, no. You're like, just no. Like, no. That is still all the way out of bounds.
Right.
That's just no. You can be the devil, but you can't be Hitler.
Right.
And that is hilarious.
Yeah,
but I like the
funny.
fact that we have created this like Voldemort, he who must not be named. It's not like I'm advocating for having little kids dress as Hitler. I don't think they should. I also don't think they should dress as the devil.
Just for the record.
Yeah. But we create this, Chernobyl zone around it. because it's that big a deal. And that sets up a director like Waititi to come in and really make his story stick because it's so out of bounds. Because he is so quote unquote out of bounds, it's striking and unexpected. It makes you see the moment differently than you would have otherwise.
Right. And when we're thinking of other silly World War II movies, it's interesting to me to compare this with Inglorious Basterds, a bad film that is just leaning into
Jewish revenge, wish fulfillment.
Right. Which is similarly silly in certain aspects.
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah. And then similarly, of course, Hogan's Heroes. Right. We're familiar with silly World War II things.
And actually, there's some hat tips to Hogan Heroes in this, for sure, in JoJo.
I've never watched it. I just know, what's his name? Clink, I guess.
Yeah, because it's the only other like slapstick Nazi thing other than Hitler in the springtime, Right.
But all that to say, we're not afraid of those silly stories. It's actually, I think that Taika Waititi got so serious while mixing those in that makes everybody uncomfortable. Because we're fine with Hogan's Heroes.
No, that's the point. If he had just said, here's all the donut sprinkles, we would have been okay.
Yeah.
The fact that he does a powerful human story set in a horrific moment and then adds the slapstick is more like Life is Beautiful.
Yep.
And Life is Beautiful.
Another movie told from a perspective of the kid about something that a kid can't fathom.
Yep, exactly. And that's another great film. Yep. And the slapstick behavior of the father in Life is Beautiful is one of the greatest touches.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it really is
it
makes it that much more potent when people are still people, they're still human, and they're still, in that case, they're still being funny in the face of destruction. They're refusing to bend and break that way. So that one I love. I really do love that one. It's got some little quirks and issues here and there, but it's a pretty great film. And JoJo takes it and executes that kind of a narrative on just a high wire act of character work.
And I don't know if this was the first time you've watched it, in that final 35 minutes when he starts dropping the emotional beats, the mom followed by Elsa, followed by their reunification. That's a powerful 30 minutes.
Yep, it is. And setting up, like really good craftsman, setting up the shoe tying.
Yep.
It's like, and how are we going to really land on this mom loss? Oh, but tying shoes. That's how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, really? You're going to pull that off? Yep. He's going to pull that off.
He has that other scene where she's up on the embankment dancing, right?
Yep.
And we're used to seeing her feet at that level. And then when he torques that and puts it in a different situation, wow.
Also his JoJo's inability to tie shoes. And it's just like, it's rugged.
Yeah.
So that one's brutal, but the Scarlett Johansson's performance is phenomenal. And also the weird grief that she's masking.
Yeah.
As she's dealing with the loss of a husband and having a son who's a little devoted Nazi.
Yeah.
And trying to deal with that.
Yep.
Is incredibly difficult. And then, of course, our Jewish girl, I forget her.
Elsa.
Yeah, I forget the actress's name, but she did a fantastic job also. And it's great. I mean, it's just a really, really well made film.
I mean, even down to the level, so Klinzendorf as a hilarious, flamboyant, I never thought I wanted to see a Third Reich, flamboyant soldier, but you start to root for this guy big time. Oh, he's the third emotional beat in that final. But even down to the fact that the left side or the right side of his body is always, he hasn't closed the buttons on his shirt. He never can see people raising their hands to the right of him. So that, what's her name? The comedian and
Rebel.
Rebel. Yeah. He's always spinning around looking for her. So down to the level of like, he can't even do his buttons on the right side.
She's got some hilarious beats.
He can walk the clones. That was one of the jobs.
It's babies for Germany.
18. Funny.
18 babies. So, but yeah, those little touches, he does a great job of not explaining.
Yeah.
Like just presents.
Yeah.
And if we're being honest, also, like, okay, there's a flamboyance, but there's it's kind of delicate when you, in our day and age, when you're like, yeah, and also you Nazis are gay. This is gay. This whole thing is gay, but but he's a good guy. But then there's the weird cultic, weird cultic acolyte who's really into him, and then there's this the homo undercurrent that's just, it's hidden away far enough that only older kids are going to pick up on it, and it's an added part of the criticism, and it's an added part of the criticism from the filmmaker's perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw some note somewhere. He's got like 2 Iron Crosses and several, so he's like a highly decorated German soldier, and this is what they do, which is kind of the theme of the movie. Yep. It looks like everything's great, but the Third Reich is crumbling, and underneath there's just this bubbling current of what are we doing?
Yeah.
A couple other questions here. So the guy who gave Jojo his name, Jojo Rabbit, Simon asks, one of our devoted Canadian soul food listeners, shout out to the Canadians.
Canada. Way to go, Canada.
Asks us, he gets the Jojo Rabbit chant, then you see him in a truck heading off to the front, and then the truck comes back empty later.
Yep.
And Simon was wondering, why did they kill that guy off?
Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess maybe Simon, you wanted it to be more.
He wasn't terribly interesting. He adds a note. He adds a different note. So there's all this goofiness for the younger boys, but then there's just the straight up cruelty and evil.
Sure.
Yeah,
so the actual killing of the rabbit.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you have the cruelty and the evil, and where does it go? It goes off to be destroyed.
And there's a sense in which you can't dodge around that.
No, you can't. You can't pretend like it didn't exist. That was massive.
That would be a pitfall of the caricature not working.
Yep. It's just we all know that it needs to be acknowledged, but every other movie's told us that.
Yeah.
So having that character and having him play that role and being goofy and mean in his cruelty. So it's not like he's, he doesn't look amazing. He's not powerfully built. He's just really cruel. He's just really petty and cruel and vicious. And we all know that aspect of
the 2 characters that foil each other there would be that Hans character, and then also the very tall Gestapo guy.
Yep.
Who describes the same way, petty bureaucracy, going to their heads and loving the fact that everybody's having to heil him and all his guys. Yeah.
Merchant.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. The whole line
as they're just passing it around. It's like, and that's a perfect example. Like, hey, we're really scared right now because we can't have them find out what we're doing in this house, but they're spending all their time hiling each other.
And then at the moment, the beat when Klinzendorf comes in and they do it all again. I don't know. It's good stuff. It's just really good.
It's just pure John Cleese right there.
This is. Yeah.
Waititi tapping into the John Cleese inspiration of his childhood or something.
Simon wants to know also if the moment of Jojo's transformation is complete when Elsa asks who won the war and he says, "We did." I think Simon's misreading that though, because that's his final betrayal, right?
Yeah.
Jojo's final moment of doing the wrong thing.
He's doing the wrong thing, and it is the right thing. So there's this layer of, it's kind of like a really simplistic version would be, I don't remember where I've done this, but I have done this where I have a character, cry out to God by means of taking his name in vain. Where somebody is just reflexively, yelling the name of God, and it has the effect of a prayer. God receives it. It's like
you said his name.
Yeah. And so you can have a character's intention, and then you can have the one tier up. What's the intention of the film?
Yeah.
And so the intent of the film when he says "we did" is he means you and I did, we did. The film is there. What Jojo means there is that last betrayal where he can't quite let her go yet.
Right.
And so Jojo's intent is, we did, Germany did.
Yeah.
You have to stay with me. You can't leave me.
Right. Because he thinks he is even more lonely than the start of the movie when he was absolutely miserable.
Yep.
Right. So he has not yet seen with the eyes of his transformation.
Yeah. So it's his last mistake, and yet there's a layer from writer director on top of that.
Right.
So the writer director's intent is it's a it's a stacked meaning. So Jojo's flunking, you know, he's revealing his affection for her and his desire to not lose her via a lie that is doomed to failure. He knows it's not going to stick, right?
Yeah.
And
then he gets slapped for it at the
so
end.
his lie is addressed as it should have been.
Yeah.
He gets slapped, and then the other meaning is addressed by the dancing in the street, which is fantastic. And only Waititi would understand that would pay off.
Yeah.
The fact that paid off is so unexpected, because I can't imagine getting there and thinking, what am I going to do to pay
I
it
was
off?
going to
It's like
ask you
cue some 1960s music, and she's going to dance, start slowly.
How did he think of that? Because I was
I don't know.
It's
just,
obviously he set up dancing really well through the whole thing, but it's very much 40s style dancing, you know. Well,
yeah.
I guess Scarlett Johansson does some pretty funny stuff, but David Bowie in German, right? That his hero song translated into German and then singing. I don't know. I was just sitting there watching. How does this work? This feels like it's too far, but it wasn't. And the thing is, I can see easily. So if I was going to try to reverse engineer it, and I would say, if this is how I would get to it, if I were to have gotten to it, would be, okay,
I want them to dance in the street.
Right.
Yeah. It's like they're going to dance.
Yep.
And then from there, it'd be like shifting flavors until you found something unexpected that also worked for their characters.
Okay.
Because they couldn't just like go Judy Garland on the situation. It couldn't,
right.
You know, it had to be them. And it couldn't even mirror Scarlett Johansson's personality.
Yeah.
It has to be a culmination of their relationship, these two.
Yeah.
And so that means it's got to be awkward. It's got to be weird. And so then he just...
I guess David Bowie.
And so then he just played David Bowie in German. And so then the really slow start, you know, just like the awkward, like
a little bit
I'm not good at this, and I don't know what I'm doing. It's kind of weird. It works so perfectly. So I can see having played that out in his head a lot of times. I mean, the way I'll write a scene, not even in film, but in a book, is I will nail down my setting. So I'll have my setting fully pictured. I'll have everything blocked, like the character movements blocked, the props, you know, all there. And then I'll just reshoot it over and over and over and over with variations
in your head.
And so, so I'm just watching this character come in and do this, watching this character come in and do that,
Okay.
You know, if you're walking into a desk and sitting down and, you know, moving the chair and sitting down, refusing to sit down, standing behind the chair, sitting and then standing, like all these different effects. And what is the person behind the desk doing? What are they messing with? Are they cutting their fingernails? Are they poking a spider with a pencil on the desk? Like and each of these, and then reshooting it, walking in and seeing that character do this, and then backing up and walking just over and over and over again. And until you find that, you know, kind of the beat that you think really works and pays off. I remember early on, before I had any kind of habit, I was trying to figure that out for the end of Lee Pike. And so
while writing or screenplay?
Writing the novel.
Okay.
And so the last chapter is called Crazy Berry. And I was trying to figure out what's the beat? Like what's the closing beat for these two characters? And I put them all sorts of places, and eventually they ended up on the chimney of the house, you know, sitting up there. And I was like, yep, that's
okay.
The two of them sitting up there looking over the valley. You know, they're as high as they can get. They were stuck low, so I need them to go as high as they can go. And so they're at their highest point they could possibly get at. And what are they doing? Like, how do they do this? And I needed I got to like, okay, we need some sort of sacramental thing. And then I ended up with them having this old fermented juice box called Crazy Berry. That's like way past its sell by.
Okay.
And so there's
I love it.
Which that character had. And so then I'm like, okay, so we're going to have that. And so then I back all the way early in the story and I start seeding that. And so I seed that prop and I seed that thing and I give it meaning because he's been saving it. Mm-hmm. He's saving Crazy Berry. And then, you know, it's like, and then we end up sitting on the chimney at the very end and we pass the Crazy Berry. So when I look at something like Taika Waititi and these two kids dancing the way they're dancing, I can only assume, you know, I don't know that his process is anything like mine. I can only assume that he got to dancing and then needed to find the right dance for these two awkward characters in this awkward moment. That was also his sign off.
Yeah.
So it also had to be him, the filmmaker, the creator signing off. And I think that's where the Bowie came from. and the time breakage and everything else. You know, we're theoretically in the 40s.
Right. And then jump to what is
Yeah.
it, 70s or 80s? Yeah, okay. That's good. More questions about that. I heard Taika saying that you have to be a lot more patient when you're shooting with kids, which makes sense. How many times do you think, how much time would you devote to that dance scene? I guess obviously you can't tell, but is that something that you'd have to do over and over? Or do you just try and get the actors in the right frame of mind and then just let what happens happen? I don't know. That one just
it would totally depend. Okay. And it'd be really fun to see an interview just about that. I wouldn't be surprised. Like Clint Eastwood always rolls cameras, and so his actors don't know when the cameras are on or off.
Okay.
And so he'll rehearse, and there's a lot of people will imitate that, where he has the actors work through scenes when they don't think it's being filmed or they don't know. You know, it's just
okay, because then you can sometimes get them very natural.
Yeah, and they're far more relaxed, and you end up with some pretty decent takes.
Okay,
you know, prior to ever actually calling action that way. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like that had happened a little bit, at least with the beginning of the dance.
Yeah, where they're just kind of getting into it.
Like, just feel it, you know, just. And they're kind of and it's just kind of awkward.
Yeah.
But however, he did an amazing job because the actors both deliver, and kids are really good at pretending. You know, they're pretty decent. There's a lot of reasons you have to be patient with kids on set. And that includes unions and everything else, and tutors and breaks and all that kind of stuff. But he did a phenomenal job. And so the kid actors.
Nice. Okay.
And it's completely inappropriate. You know, it's like in some ways.
Yeah. You mean,
I would love to. So, you know, the YouTube channel, like studio pitch meetings or whatever. Right. I don't know if there is one for Jojo Rabbit. There should be one, but this is one of those ones where Taika Waititi just got to do what he wanted to do. And that was kind of, hey, we're just going to let Taika cook, where that's it.
Yeah.
Because if you try to explain this, you try to pitch this to somebody, you are doomed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are really, really doomed. Now,
well, he had to wait. He had to wait a long time.
Yeah, but there's a book. There's a book,
right.
but I've not heard good things about the book. I've not read the book, but I've heard the book's pretty bad. And so
yeah, and big thing, the imaginary friend Hitler is not in the book.
Yeah, right.
So that's what makes this work.
Huge. And it's also funny him talking about how he could not get any actors to do what he wanted them to do.
Right.
So when he was trying to direct anybody to be Hitler that way, no one could. And he kept having to like show them himself. And then finally he was like, okay, fired everybody and just put the costume on and he plays Hitler. And boy, does he play Hitler.
Oh man. He said,
his little leaping through the woods stuff is just
Heil me, little man.
Heil me. Heil me.
He said one of the trickiest parts about that was actually being in costume as Hitler and directing at the same time. Which it's so funny to watch, just him like, you gotta do this. I saw some behind the scenes clips of him like trying to, as Hitler, into a camera telling someone how to say Scheisse as a German. And it was funny to watch Hitler. I don't know, it was such a surreal moment, which it fit with the movie.
Yeah.
That's what it's
well done, Taika Waititi.
Yeah.
And of course, Hunt for the Wilder People.
Right.
Depending on the age of your kids, needs a couple filters, but pretty minimal. It really shows you all you need to know about what Taika Waititi was going to be as a director.
Right.
And there's some just magnificent comedy in that one.
Yep. So good. And now
Ricky
he's
Baker. Once rejected, now accepted. If you haven't seen it, see it.
Yeah, he apparently wrote this right after he did What We Do in the Shadows. I've
tried to watch that one and I failed. I've watched maybe 18 minutes of it. the vampire comedy. And even there's still things like I could keep going, but it's like,
no, I hate to say that I watched it, but I'm going to blame.
Should I keep going?
No.
No.
It's all the same.
Yeah. It's just over over and over. Yeah.
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 But that's funny. Now he's been totally marveled.
Right.
And I have not appreciated his genius so much as it.
I've not even watched his Thor. I have heard it's the best, but you know what? I don't trust anyone who tells me anything about Marvel movies.
Yeah, when you think his Thor is the best, that's just a sign that you knew the Thor movies were really stupid and needed somebody to come in and make fun
of itself. Yeah.
Right.
So I've not seen it. I can't get the nerve up to watch it.
Yeah.
I just don't have that much time.
The individual scenes, you can see his flavor, and then you think, oh, they had him in here just so people would be like, haha, wasn't that scene so funny?
Right.
But I don't know. That's not why we watch movies. Not the only reason we watch movies.
Yeah. So in general, and let it be known, not big Marvel fans. There you go. That's all.
I know. We'll probably have to dig deeper at some point. Okay. It's so interesting to compare Boy with the Striped Pajamas style, children's World War II stuff, which is, I don't know. I have never watched it or read it just because I know what that's going to deliver.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so tragic. And there's something that I think he's trying to tell a similar story that needs to be told without having that same sort of, I don't know, tragedy. Do you think that's right? Is he trying to avoid the overt pain, or just, a lot of these World War II movies are just finger
I don't
into
think,
the wound.
Yeah, I don't think that he is avoiding it. I think he's actually playing it with quite, well, a lot of skill, a lot of dexterity.
Okay.
And, you think about the heartbeats, the actual, like the feels of Jojo Rabbit, where it goes, where those beats hit later in the film. They're potent.
Yeah,
they're potent beats, and they are in part potent beats because they come at you in a way that is not manipulative and is not. It's more of a sneak attack. It's not just, hey, you signed up for sadness, and so I'm just going to give you a ton of sadness.
Yeah,
and the fact is, there's a lot of misery there. There's a lot of suffering and misery. So we can become pretty deadened to it. It's kind of like how much corruption there is in government right now. So it's like, oh, we have recordings of these Eastern European executives bribing the vice president, and we're just kind of like, whatever. It's like, just Twitter files and election fraud, and everybody's been yelling everything. And
myocarditis.
Yep. And and how many people are dying from the vaccine, and what's happening with Jamie Foxx, and of course they're going to deny it. That's exactly what they would say if it was a vaccine side effect, and yada yada yada. And everybody's just so amped and so inundated with corruption and scandal and whistleblowing. I mean, there's a high level top secret guy whistleblowing on aliens and UFOs to Congress.
Oh, we were going to talk about this.
And it's not going to even hit the front page of the New York Times. Doesn't even make the front page. Like, it's a non-thing. And neither, like, we've got trans activists going topless, at the White House. Like, it's such a clown world now that it's hard for anybody to be outraged.
Yeah.
It's hard. Your outrage nerve endings are deadened. It's hard to be scandalized. It's hard to be upset by corruption because it's everywhere. So move to a place like World War II and think about just the heartbreak and the tragedy. The exact same thing happens.
Right.
It was all Schindler's List. It was all that. It was Boy in the Striped Pajamas. It was Defiance. It was, all
Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, Bridge Too Far, Longest Day, just nonstop.
So, and it was that way. It was that way. So, it's like, it's one of those scenes in Saving Private Ryan where the guys are sitting there and they're all flipping through the dog tags and they're being flippant about it. And then they see,
the division of the survivors come by. Yeah.
And it's like just in that heaviness of like realizing this is real, but you see their deadness. They're deadened to that. That's the problem with approaches like Schindler's List and Boy in the Striped Pajamas now. When you just say, hey, this sucked. Now, I think Boy in the Striped Pajamas is a little bit more interesting just because of the dynamic through the fence.
Right.
It's like the contrast. But at the same time, it's like the device is interesting, but at the same time, it's just coming at you with, hey, do you want to suck on a lemon?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I just did. It's not
right.
And I sucked on another lemon yesterday, and then there was that one this morning. And
it's like somebody asking, do you want can I touch your bruise? And then they just stick the finger and do it for the whole movie.
Yeah, but exactly. And so the problem with that, the problem is that it loses its power. The problem is that it is just hitting that nerve ending until that nerve ending is dead, instead of stepping sideways and hitting you fresh.
Yeah.
Instead of hitting that note when it hits it, hitting it with potency and from an unexpected place, and making you feel it in the way you should feel. You should feel that sorrow and tragedy and everything about what went down around World War II. Because you should feel that, then you should not just go after that one note and hit that one key on the piano over and over and over again. Because pretty soon you're going to tune it out. And because you should feel it,
right?
Don't,
I get that.
Don't do that.
Three World War II books that try to do that. Time's Arrow by Martin Amis basically tells the story of a concentration camp guard backwards, right? So very literary fiction, silly device that only kind of works one time. But he's trying to address that same problem. How do I tell a story about a villain who actually ended up living his whole life? But we're going to tell it backwards, so you don't really know till later on where you're heading. So you don't head into it knowing it's a World War II book.
Right. Okay.
And then The Book Thief and All the Light We Cannot See are two other ones that feel like they're trying to dodge some of that.
And all the Light You Cannot See is successful for a while.
Yeah.
And then just loses its own world. The fabric of its own mythos kind of unravels.
And that one's through through the blind girl, I guess. So that love story. And it got into similar criticisms, right? Because Werner, if I'm remembering his name right, and the blind girl, their relationship,
it kind of ends up going nowhere. And there was this mystical piece, the tone in their relationship, the tone in the mystery of this girl memorizing the streets of Paris and everything else, and the contrast between these two kids.
Yeah.
The contrast drawn between these two kids just kind of goes nowhere. And
it definitely fizzles out.
Yeah. But it's the bigger thing for me with that book, and this is done just to get way off, is that there's this whole mystery of this mythical thing. There's like a magical realism piece that's never paid off.
See, I forgot it.
But we don't have to talk about this one.
I forgot even but you're right, there's
this gem and this,
right. There are a few sections I just forgot.
And it's and that was awesome. And it was setting up something cool. Then what's it going to do? Where's it going to go? How's it going to pay off? And it just doesn't pay off. But I think it's still a really impressive book in many, many ways. But yeah, with JoJo, you will feel a completely different way about that period of time and about those humans than you ever have watching any other World War II movie.
And I think your claim about being more accurate probably holds up on other levels too, because I know the reason it's so bright and colorful is because of the research that Taika did. And trying to say, hey, at this time, 1930s, 40s Germany was very fashionable and really brightly colored. And so he moves away from the palette of gray, which is kind of the World War II color.
The Grims.
Into something that's going to it's going to contrast with the decay underneath instead of us all being.
I always liked Swing Kids also.
Okay, I haven't seen that one. I'll have to write it down.
That one is, and that's just kind of like a teen movie that I enjoyed in high school, and I showed my kids, and we've kept up. It's just a fun tale, a little pocket tale of resistance in Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. Resistance among those people who love swing music.
Yeah,
so it's not talking. It's aware of everything else, but it's not getting into everything else. It's just focusing on the pressure cooker on these specific kids who are all friends because they love Benny Goodman.
Okay.
And it's, and that Jewish music.
Yep.
So
I think Snow Treasure is another one of those where it's just about the kids basically smuggling gold out of whatever was Norway. One of
there's a lot. It's funny how many stories there are.
Yeah.
It's like just unending. And so many of them are great. There's I wish I could remember which regiment this was. I think it was a regiment, but it was the Asian regiment, where it was like, then they threw together all these Pacific Islanders and, and Japanese and Korean and just broadly sort of broadly Asian all lumped together.
Okay.
And they could not stand each other. And there's all these feuds and fights and everything else in between inside.
Yeah.
They then, I believe, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember the name of the book. I actually was looking into option on it. Like, man, who owns this? I know somebody owns it, but it was, I believe they saw more combat than any other unit.
Wow.
Not unit, sorry, right? I'm pretty sure it was a full regiment, but
Whoa.
but it was the thing that really brought them together was the internment back home. So they were all at war,
right? In
combat, hating each other, and just feuding amongst each other. Then all of their families got interned stateside,
right? Our own little concentration camp.
And then suddenly, their demeanor and their attitude and their bond with each other all changed.
Interesting.
And that was the journey they went through. So I need to look at it more closely. I don't remember how many guys this was. Are we talking about 1,000? Are we talking about 5,000? Are we talking about 500? I don't remember. It's been a long time, but those kinds of stories are just everywhere. They're all over the place. Band of Brothers, Guadalcanal,
right?
Those things are everywhere and crazy. And so I appreciated watching something like Jojo Rabbit, that because I have seen and admired and been all about so many of these, just was a completely different flavor.
Yep.
Completely different color palette, music palette,
yep,
approach, everything else.
Yep. And that scene where he blows himself up is still one of the greatest moments of comedy. The captain goes, "Don't do that."
Yeah, it's a good little movie.
Yeah, and I think
hopefully you all watched it. Yeah,
I think that's a wrap.
And next up, Escape from Pretoria.
Right,
different flavor. That one's going to be a lot of fun. So, a South African apartheid jailbreak movie.
Wow. Something you didn't even know was a taste, but it is.
It's a flavor. It's a thing. It really happened. It's a true story.
Those are good.
And it's one I really, really enjoyed. So check it out.
Awesome. We're running low on questions too. If you want something discussed, we've got plenty of things to talk about. Aliens.
I know. But, I know I have. Well, true confessions. Apparently I have a LinkedIn. I never look at, I don't know the password. But I've been told by people that they try to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I don't really know how to look at messages on Instagram. Occasionally I do, but it's like maybe once a month or so. Every now and then I'll respond to somebody and I realize like, oh, I just saw this because it came in like 30 seconds ago, and they get like a 30-second reply. And then I'll see, hey, I'm somehow in this message folder, and there's all these messages, like so many messages for months. Anyway, I apologize. I know I've been getting questions. I know I've been receiving questions. I've been told now that I've received questions on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't know how to read them.
You have to try. You have to try harder.
My kids get their Luddite skills from someone.
There you go.
And it's not their mom. Alrighty. Until next time, we'll be talking about Escape from Pretoria soon. But next week, something else.
You know that now is the time when I like to thank you for being a SASF listener and also show you something cool that we've been working at Canon Press. And what I'm holding right now, if you're only listening in audio, you won't be able to see this. You'll have to listen to the sound. But if you're watching on Canon Plus and if you're a subscriber, you can see I'm holding a Christ is Lord box. Go to christislord.com to see why we're trying to put up a billboard that says Christ is Lord in your area and why that's making certain sad sections of the internet very upset. Of course, it's true. And so we got some fun stuff inside. Again, if you're just listening, hear the wonderful sounds. We got stickers. We got bumper stickers. We have, they say Christ is Lord too. We've got a wartime songbook. But of course, the most important part of this box is the Mere Christendom book, which I have to say is one of the most pretty books you're going to see. Check out that foil on the cover, the elegant cross on it, and of course, a signature from Douglas Wilson. What is Mere Christendom? Well, basically, it's the declaration of the book that Christ conquered the West the first time, and this is how he's going to do it again. So, ChristIsLord.com, buy the book, check out the billboards, and enjoy. You know that now is the time when I like to thank you for being a SASF listener and also show you something cool that we've been working at Canapress. And what I'm holding right now, if you're only listening in audio, you won't be able to see this. You'll have to listen to the sound. But if you're watching on Canon Plus and if you're a subscriber, you can see I'm holding a Christ is Lord box. Go to ChristIsLord.com to see why we're trying to put up a billboard that says Christ is Lord in your area and why that's making certain sad sections of the internet very upset. Of course, it's true, and so we got some fun stuff inside. Again, if you're just listening, hear the wonderful sounds. We got stickers. We got bumper stickers. We have, they say Christ is Lord too. We've got a wartime songbook. But of course, the most important part of this box is the Mere Christendom book, which I have to say is one of the most pretty books you're going to see. Check out that foil on the cover, the elegant cross on it, and of course, a signature from Douglas Wilson. What is Mere Christendom? Well, basically, it's the declaration of the book that Christ conquered the West the first time, and this is how he's going to do it again. So, ChristIsLord.com, buy the book, check out the billboards, and enjoy.